Hey guys, welcome to another interview. Today I have Nick Long. So this is gonna be, I think, one of my favorite interviews to do because Nick is one of the most obsessed, I would say, about the program out of my clients right now. And I always love doing interviews with people who are obsessed because we can go extremely deep with the principles and the processes. And it's not just like a vague one around here's the great things that are happening, but we can actually talk about the how. And so in this interview, you can expect this to be in a few chapters. So the first thing we're going to talk about is kind of like his initial situation and how things were with him internally, but also how things were in the relationship. We're going to talk about how he uh, found me in the program and his experience in the program, which wasn't always smooth. There was a lot of like up and down in the beginning, not only in the program itself, but also with the relationship too. And then we're going to talk about where they are now. And of course, we're going to talk about the learning lessons as well. And the learning lessons here, I want to divide it into 4 parts. The first part is I want to talk about how safety is really the crucial foundation for every relationship. I don't care how unique your situation is, you think it is, everything boils down to the lack of safety. You create safety, you will fix every single problem in your life, in your relationship. First part. Second part is to create safety, we need to understand the internal shifts properly. And we're going to get a very specific and precise look into why without the right internal shifts, you will never be able to create safety, even if you tried. Then part 3, we're going to talk about the how of the internal shift and why I think a lot of people struggle to ever create meaningful results because they don't know the how. And then last, we're going to talk about how this program and this journey that Nick went through has been a very difficult and long journey, but that's part of the game. And we're going to talk about what kept him motivated throughout, the mentality behind my clients who are truly successful, and what it takes to be successful too. We'll talk about that too. But let's start with how things were before. And in keeping with the theme of like internal shifts being important, I want to first talk about your internal state back then.
Yep.
And I'm going to start this by saying, when you first joined, I remember saying to Jason, I remember saying, man, this guy, he's so beta. Like he's so insecure, no self-esteem, anxious as hell. He's going to be in for a rough ride here. But here we are, over a year later. But from your perspective, how were you feeling?
So at the time, I mean, there's like kind of like 2 things. Like the first thing is like, I mean, I've been struggling with like anxiety in myself for years and like trying to grapple with why that was. And I could sense that like it was affecting like my whole life and the confidence, my whole life, my self-esteem, and impacting my relationship with my wife. And so when I started your program, that like my anxiety was on fire because like I could sense that like our relationship was in a very struggled state, and it was exhausting. It was kind of really hard. And I could sense, at a point like my partner just like didn't like, I could just feel that she just didn't want to do it anymore. And like for me, like that lit my anxiety on fire because I was in a place where like I was having a hard time like grappling, finding my own confidence without like that attachment to the relationship. So like I was feeling really lost. I was feeling really hopeless. And I remember like one day, like I was in this office on here and I was just crying in the corner and I just felt so stuck. And so I was very, very anxious, and I had felt like I had leaned into everything that we had worked on together to do. And like felt like things were perpetually getting harder, and my anxiety kept increasing. And I got to a point where I think I just felt like kind of almost like numb inside a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was hard.
I think if, your cycle reminded me of my cycle back then,
Mm-hmm.
which was, I was always an anxious kid. Like I grew up in poverty. I grew up in a household where the world was always out to get me. And I always had to prove myself to the world. I deep down believed that I wasn't worthy enough as a person. I wasn't good enough just the way I am. That's why I was so scared, for example, to go into YouTube, to really assert myself into this industry, for example. And it was screwing up all my relationships too, because when you come into a relationship from a place of anxiety, you are going to subconsciously do a lot of things that sabotages that relationship.
Yep.
For example, I remember my partner wanted to say like, hey, I'm focused this week, we can't hang out because I'm focusing on work. And I would get so anxious. I would get so insecure that I would do such needy things that pushed her away. And I think that was what happened here, that because you were coming from this place of fear, this place of insecurity, you were subconsciously doing things to sabotage that relationship. When she pulls away, that made you even more anxious, which makes you do more of the sabotaging things, which pulls away further and more anxious. And it's just a really vicious cycle. Like,
yeah, it's a terrible feedback loop. It's exactly what happened. I mean, like, just to give an example, I mean, there was one time where my partner like told me like she wanted to go to graduate school, you know, early in our relationship, and she was really interested in that idea. And I was just so insecure about like, what would this mean for our relationship? Would we still be living together? Like, how would this impact us? I did not take the time to discover like why she desired that so much. I mean, there's so many opportunities that I like subconsciously sabotaged because I was thinking about how like it would affect our relationship, and like, you know, like I could create admiration for the fact that she even wants to do this in the first place, because it's hard to stop working and go to graduate school, for example. Like, it's something to admire, but I just couldn't see that because I was so stuck in like my head and the anxious cycle, and that like destroyed a lot of safety for her, because it communicated to her like, hey, you know, like when I tell you something that's really important to me, like I'm gonna like get really anxious, and like I'm gonna recoil, and like I'm not gonna feel understood, and which means that, you know, like less things are going to be shared. And that's exactly what happened. And that created a cycle that, you know, that vicious cycle that you talked about, and it destroyed a lot of safety in the relationship.
and it's not only just destroying safety, but it's also very unattractive.
Yeah.
Because it tells your partner here that, again, one, whenever you share something about, whenever she shares something about her desires, her wants, and the desires, her wants doesn't always make you feel happy, then you're going to like start manipulating, start getting all insecure and sad. Of course, she's going to think eventually, like, what's the point of telling him this stuff? There's no point here.
Right.
Right. Because he's just going to panic. But then the second thing also is it kind of shows your cards too. It shows your cards about just how insecure you are, about your place, about your value, about that you don't see yourself as someone to be admired, because you act like you're someone not to be admired, right? You're always begging for the admiration, and when you don't get it, you get all insecure.
Crumble inside.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's really hard to feel safe with someone who's like that. It's hard to respect and to feel admiration for someone like that. And by default, it's hard to feel passion and align with someone like that. And so what's funny again is, you know, initially you were scared because she wanted to go to graduate school, and that made you more anxious, which makes you do toxic things. And then eventually it goes from her wanting to go to graduate school into, you know what, maybe we should separate. And then maybe we should divorce.
That's kind of what happened.
It just keeps escalating, and then you feel worse and worse and worse, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to add to that, if you don't mind, like for me, like, because I have like a really happy-go-lucky personality, and there was a time in my life like where I thought I could hide my anxiety through my happy-go-lucky personality. But like the thing is like, especially in a relationship, like you can't fake this shit. Like I thought I could at some time in my life, but like it just, the things you do impacts everything you say, the way you react, like the way your body language is, and the questions that you ask, and then the things that you do. And like but even to the point, like, you know, what you do with your eyes, you know, do you look away? Do you look at your phone? Whatever it is, like, can't hide it. And like, you can just feel this stuff, you know, like that something was like driving that anxiety inside. Like she could sense it. Like it's that I want to point out that's pretty remarkable. Like how important that was, is just understanding that like you can't fake it, you know? And then the real growth that I know we're going to talk about later could not be faked. And that's just an important point I wanted to make. Yeah.
What you said kind of reminds me of some of the clients that come in pretty early on in the program.
Yeah.
Right. Because usually people who are operating from that sense of fear, sense of anxiety, and sense of lack of belief in their own value, when their partner says they want space, they would either take on the very active resistance to it. Like they would get angry and say like, oh, what a whore. Like what, someone's not loyal. I deserve someone better. If you can't take me at my worst, then you don't deserve me at my best, whatever it is. And
yeah,
they're saying like, oh, she just doesn't recognize my own value. But the thing about that I want to say to those people that really they need to think about is like, you know, of all the people in the world who knows your true value is your partner. She knows the ugliest, the worst sides of you, right? And you can tell yourself all day long that you're high value or you are valuable, whatever it is. You've done this, you've done that, but clearly there's something wrong there because your partner initially saw the value in you, but then she stopped eventually if you're in a long-term relationship, right?
Yeah.
The second approach is people take the stoic approach where they say things like, well, the only person that's having a problem with me is really my partner. My coworkers, my friends, they love me. They see my value. Well, that's because your coworkers and your friends don't know who you are.
Yeah.
They haven't been there in your darkest moments, in your moments when you're most vulnerable, when you're yourself. But your wife knows that. She knows you, okay? Or they play the passive approach. And we have one client like this right now where, you know, they like to use their anxiety as a crutch. Meaning, you know, their partner's pulling away, they feel bad. And so they tell stories to get people to pity them. Right? Oh, I feel so bad right now. It's so hard right now. I'm so tired right now. I feel so anxious right now. Oh, I can't deal with it. And their hope is that when they tell these stories, it will convince their partner to go like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for doing this to you. But then sometimes at some point they realize that that pity game is not getting anywhere. It's actually like turning off your partner even more. But instead of waking up, they keep trying it. Well, if that level of pity is not enough, let me try this next level of pity, right? Really pity me. And then they keep going and they get more and more upset every single time they realize the world doesn't give a crap about how sorry you feel about yourself, how bad you feel, how many nights you spend crying. It doesn't matter, right? And I feel like you took the first approach a little bit, the angry approach a little bit, and you took the last approach too, where you played the pity game for a bit too. But we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
So obviously, you know, we talked about how the relationship was degrading as well. Because you were degrading internally, the relationship was degrading as well. What was the relationship like back then?
I mean, I think, you know, we just like had like fights and stuff about sometimes like important stuff that we could agree on, but like really it was like the stupid stuff. Like, you know, like maybe the fence would break or whatever. And then like we would have conversations about about having conversations about talking about the fence. And just like little things just felt really hard. Like we just had trouble communicating about small things, and it would explode into big things. And it would create a sense that it created a lot of fatigue on the relationship. Like it was outweighing a lot of the feelings of good in our relationship. I think there was like a lack of trust in our relationship in terms of like feeling understood and like listened to and like understanding, like, you know, like getting into like, you know, I guess this goes into like the fundamental attribution error, which we probably talk about at some point. Like, just like for me, like like I struggled to like listen to what my partner was really trying to say, and I'd focus on how she was saying it. There was like a lot of character blame associated with that, and that like damaged like so much of our communication, you know?
Yeah.
And like cycles like that, you know, that really had a deleterious effect on the relationship. And I think because of like those like things that were like really difficult, it made it hard to cultivate joy in the relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because when you look back, and when anybody looks back at the relationship issues, you always fight about the stupidest shit. You always look back at your fights and the stuff that you argued about, the stuff that you felt about, bad about, and you think, what was I doing with that petty shit? But while the stuff is petty, the feeling you get from not having safety, from not having admiration, from not having that alignment, from not having being one mind and stuff like that, and not having that in the what is supposed to be the most fulfilling, the most important relationship of your life, the relationship that you spend the most time in, that those problems feel real. Like they feel strong.
Yeah. You mentioned the pity earlier. That's like what was generating that. Yeah. Because your life is so connected to your relationship. And when that starts to go down, you really feel that. And that's part of how I got in that cycle of pity that you mentioned. Yeah.
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 So let's talk about how you eventually found the program. So like you said, you were seeking a lot of therapy, basically, a lot of coaches for this anxiety issue that you were having. Tell me your experience with that first, with therapy and stuff like that.
Yeah, you know, I reached out to I've done like some therapy with several different therapists throughout my life, maybe for been like the last 8-10 years. And a lot of the approach to tackle anxiety from them was around like cultivating like acceptance, like where you learn to just accept something as it is, which none of the things I'm going to mention are wrong. Like they're definitely in the right direction. And I don't want to like bash on my therapist because they really did care about me and my growth. Like they're very genuine, very kind people. And I also know a lot of people who have benefited from therapy, but I was just in this place where like, you know, I would do like the acceptance training, and I'd help a little bit, you know, I try like cultivate mindfulness, which is a really good thing. Like I do things like journaling, and which is also a good thing. But, you know, the big thing I think they tried to get me to do is to like really lean into my anxiety and like expose myself intentionally to like things that like actively cause me anxiety, like push back and disagree with my father and things like that, you know, and start generating momentum on that. Where I think I got stuck though is a lot of the things I was learning, I was trying to plant those seeds in my mind, like consciously. And I've kind of learned, you know, doing your program, like you are predominantly determined by your subconscious state, like 95% of it, like how you react, like especially. And I wasn't affecting my internal state, my subconscious mind. And so what would happen is I would do said thing like, you know, approach my father or whatever. And that would cause a lot of anxiety. And like my old self, my old internal programming would take over because 95% of what you do is determined by your subconscious state. I would interpret that event in a bad way. It would cause me anxiety and my self-esteem would actually decay as a result of doing that, making me feel more stuck and more anxious.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of what they were trying to get me to do. And I think, you know, now that I think back, I think part of it was like, they had some tools, but I felt like I was never like really given any really effective processes that really turn the script on it or flip the script on it.
Yeah.
Especially like the subconscious deep component of it. And that's like where the most crucial shift was for me internally, was being able to figure out how to affect that deep internal state.
Yeah. So if we could summarize, and we're going to talk very deeply about this later on. So go ahead. Yeah.
Mention one more thing. It's really important.
For sure.
I did a lot of like talking through my anxiety and like what was causing it, what the source was. You know, we go back to like your relationship with your parents, all sorts of stuff. And I kind of like generated some victim mindset for me, like always pointing it at something else, you know, and that didn't help. And what happened is internally in my head, like this anxiety became so complicated, like so incomprehensible, that it just became like this incomprehensible mass in my head. And I kind of just became kind of numb to it because I didn't know what to do. I felt stuck, like I could never change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if I could summarize the issues there, and it kind of mirrors a lot of the issues that I've faced with therapy myself. And again, this is not to bash therapy, but this is maybe for people to understand what therapist to hire and what's a good therapist versus what's a maybe not the best. Number one is you need to understand the difference between what's necessary but not sufficient and necessary and sufficient. So all these things you're saying, like accepting where you are and leaning into where you are, like we teach all that stuff in the program. That's what we call SOC, where you just accept this true state of your being and how you got here and why you're here and what that feels like. But that alone is a necessary step. It's not sufficient to create that full transformation that you're looking for. It's like one out of the 4 steps kind of thing. Because from there, we realize like, okay, once we recognize it, we need to shift the emotions. We need to observe the shift. And that's the full spectrum. The second lesson is really using the wrong approach. So a lot of people, the way they approach changing emotions or optimizing emotions or working on emotions is, again, they use a lot of tools like journaling, like you said. But the problem with journaling is that if you are journaling from the same victim mindsets, from the same tetheredness, from the same toxic paradigms that got you there in the first place, all you're doing is journaling about the same stuff that got you there in the first place. So for example, like if you tell a depressed person to journal, they're going to journal about how sad and miserable their life is. And journaling is not going to help them. It's going to make them more depressed. So we need to change the right thing, which is change your core paradigm, your core programming, your core beliefs. And once that happens, you can journal, you can do whatever you want, and you will find that you can succeed wherever you go. Now, the question becomes like, how do you change those subconscious programming? Again, a lot of people use what we call the striving approach to doing this, not the faulting approach. And so the striving approach is, you know, when you're trying to use your willpower to make something happen, right? So for example, like if you're angry, tell yourself to not feel angry. Logically, that works. Yeah. But what you don't realize is when you tell yourself to not feel angry, you are creating a paradox where now you create, the subconscious creates this thought where like, okay, consciously I'm telling myself, don't be angry. Subconsciously, you're accepting that you are angry, and that subconsciously creates some issues. We're going to talk about that too, where we call it like the purple giraffe paradox, or you call it, it's like the Chinese finger trap. The more you try to pull, the tighter it gets and the more you can't pull, right?
Yeah.
And so if you are currently working on your emotional side, and I want you to ask yourself those 3 criteria there, right? Does your approach kind of fit and meet those 3 criteria? Because if it doesn't, then, or if you're not sure, then you could be running faster in the wrong direction. And you could be like actually making things worse for yourself for the long haul here. Anything you want to add to that before we kind of move on?
Yeah, I think that captures it pretty well. I was doing a lot, you know, a lot of the things you just mentioned, and I just, you know, I noticed in myself, like, I mean, whether it's like anxiety, like I would try to like force myself to not feel anxious, and then somehow, like miraculously, I would actually feel more anxious. Like, kind of like almost
sleeping.
Like you tell yourself, like, I'm gonna fucking do this. I got this, Nick. You got this, Nick. But like internally, I haven't changed. So when the situation comes, nothing's really any different.
Yeah. It's like sleeping again, right? It's like,
yeah.
It's like it's like trying to sleep by telling yourself to fall asleep, by forcing yourself to fall asleep.
Yeah.
Logically, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But in practice, it doesn't really work. It actually makes it harder for you to fall asleep. Same thing.
Exactly what I experienced. Cause like I used to struggle with insomnia, Geoffrey. And like, well, one of the things that made the biggest difference was just like telling myself before I go to bed, just like, whatever happens, happens, and stop pulling that Chinese finger trap. And if, I just fall asleep.
Yeah.
When it's amazing how it works. It's ironic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said your therapist eventually told you, hey, you need to check out emotional safety. You need to create safety. And then that was how you kind of stumbled upon my videos eventually. But it took you 9 months of watching my videos before you said like, okay, maybe I should try his program. Why 9 months? What was happening in the 9 months? What were you waiting for? What were you thinking about?
Yeah. At first, Geoffrey, I thought like just kind of like cruising through your videos and getting a lot of good stuff from there, like help support what I was doing. And I made some commitments to my partner to like keep doing some of that stuff, and like that we were doing in counseling and all that stuff. And like we were given books and different programs and, so like I was just using it to supplement what I was doing and kind of grow some of my knowledge. And, as I learned more and more, I kept piquing my interest, but, it kind of seemed like, from my point of view, like when we were doing that work, like initially it seemed like it was helping, but then things started like to feel more tiring. It felt like we thought we were getting anywhere, or getting somewhere, and we realized we weren't getting anywhere. And we kind of come back to the same conversation that we were having 9 months ago, and just kept having the same conversations over and over again. And eventually when things got hard enough, that's what flipped the switch in my mind, that like something doesn't feel right. Like I got to do something different, because like if our relationship doesn't work out, like I'm going to internally be crushed, and I didn't think I could handle it, honestly. So like the worst case scenario for me is I grow myself a lot and I really win from that. And that's still a good thing, but I didn't realize how far I'd go. Yeah. So, but
you knew in your heart and your soul that safety was the right way to go. Like creating safety was the right way to go.
Yeah.
But maybe, so you had the right what, but maybe you were questioning, do I have the right how of how I'm creating safety, and so on.
Exactly. Like I knew that was the most important goal, was to create safety. And when I focused on doing that, taking some of the suggestions and seeds that you planted in my head from your videos, like I did notice like that's when things really started to get better in our relationship, was when I prioritized emotional safety. But I just felt like there was so many things that I wasn't getting that was really preventing me from creating that true sense of safety. And a lot of it was internal, and I knew that. Yeah.
And like, too, in order for us to fix the internal states, you have to see through a lot of the paradoxes behind that. And we already said one of the paradoxes before, which is that to fix your internal state, you can't just will yourself to fix it. You actually have to play it smart and take the right approach, because we're working with the subconscious here. But in a relationship too, creating safety for your partner is a very falling thing. She needs to fall to trust. That's why they call it the trust fall.
Yeah.
And so in order for us to create safety, we can't just do the logical things that we think create safety.
Yep.
We need to understand how to talk to the subconscious, how to play the subconscious, how to not play, but how to influence and inspire your partner's subconscious too, right? And this paradox between the conscious and subconscious is why I think a lot of people, including yourself, you can understand what safety means, but you still cannot create it, because you are taking on the logical approach of how you think it is to create safety, but not how it actually is, because you're not playing the right game. You're not playing the right scoreboard of appealing to the subconscious in a way.
Yeah. See, that's a really good point, because I'm like very cerebral. And I'm like, I would call that myself very cerebral, like a big brain kind of person, like very obsessive, very logical, right?
And mega mind. guy.
Megamind, yeah, and it makes sense, like, because like I'm like a physicist at heart, so, but I wasn't really in touch with like my emotions, and like people, like men in particular, I think like look at that as like a bad, like weak beta thing, but like that was one of the most crucial shifts in your program, was like actually taking the time to feel what I'm feeling, understand my own depth inside of me, because that ended up becoming like the catalyst to actually connecting with someone else just through my own experiences and being able to describe what that is in like such visceral detail.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think maybe I'm getting off your question a little bit. Well, could you ask your question again?
No, I think the other question I want to ask is also, so when you eventually decided, okay, maybe I should consider this program, how I can sense there was a part of you that still couldn't trust me to help you with this. Before this conversation, this interview was recorded, we talked about kind of like the topic of credentials, for example, how I didn't have credentials. Did that kind of stuff bother you?
Yeah, a little bit. Because, you know, I mean, like, you know, like I think about like, you know, like my doctors, and they all have like degrees, right? Like my heart doctor has, you know, a long list of medical degrees that he used to get there, that he has, the experiences he's had and things he's had to go through to like qualify him to be able to like make decisions about people's hearts, for example. And like you didn't have that. Like you're just some guy on the, you know, the YouTube that I've never met before, you know, and you're just like this really interesting character. And, you know, like that did kind of help hold me back a little bit, admittedly, you know, because, you know, like there's like my original thinking was like, you know, that credentials means a lot. And I'm not saying that it doesn't mean anything, but that's kind of what was holding me back. And also just like not knowing fully like what your program was really going to feel like, you know, there's uncertainty there. Like I didn't know what the experience was truly going to be like. And what really changed that for me was just like trying so many things, thinking they were the right things. And then it feel like no matter what I did, things kept getting harder and more exhausting. And then like just had like one day where like there was a seed that you'd given me from your YouTube channel about creating emotional safety. You have a video about why like emotional safety is like the #1 ingredient in relationships. And that inspired like some of the way like I approached the couples counseling session. And like my partner came back to me after that. And that sends a message in my head, like, whoa, like this dude was right. Like,
Yeah.
like I just felt like this feels right. Like this, there's something about this that's right.
Yeah.
And that created a lot of momentum after that. Yeah.
You also mentioned when you applied for the program, you know, our interview process is very difficult. We're not nice during the interview process. Like we really expect people to be high standards, to trust us fully. If you don't trust us 99%, we won't take you. It has to be 100.
Yep.
What was your thinking when I'm guessing you were turned down in the beginning? Or
well, I showed a little bit of restraint for wanting to do it. And then your interviewer, Jason, was like, oh, maybe you don't want to do this program, actually. Are you because like I want you to be 100%, Nick. You got to be like, you know, we did like and talked about like the boat analogy, you know, putting your feet in the boat analogy. And then like, you know, I told him like I do want to do this. And but like in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, is he just trying to like pressure me or trick me or something? Like because like there are, you know, fraudsters out there who do things like that to try to like manipulate people to like do their stuff, right? And but what kept me in there is like I just knew that like, because like I'd been absorbing your material for 9 months, Geoffrey, and like it took me a long time to surrender to that decision. Like I had to explore other ideas. I had to explore things that didn't work and felt wrong and really feel that first. And I had to feel empowered to make my own decision. I did. And, I just like this guy, what he does is unfakeable.
Yeah.
Because like what you put on your YouTube channel is the most high quality stuff I've ever seen. Like everything just clicked. Like the way you explain things just makes so much sense. Like why aren't other people explaining it this way? Like this just makes so much sense. Like maybe it was peeling to my logical side of my brain. And I just knew though, like what you do is unfakeable because you can tell when what someone's doing, but they're not faking it.
I kind of want to touch on that credentials part. So obviously you tell people about the program, that you were in the program and stuff like that. And obviously the first thing people think is like, who is this guy? What's his credentials? In fact, one of the top searches right now is like my name and then credentials, right? What would you say to those people who question the credentials? Having been through the program now, having felt what the program can do for you, etc.,
Yeah. I would never tell them that credentials wasn't important at all, but like I would tell them that like, I've been doing a lot of work with people who do have credentials and I still felt stuck. And I've been doing it for years and I kind of like got to a place where I was hopeless and I was trying to get like a different perspective. And, like what I would tell them is like, learned experience is really important too. And having a high sense of like standards for the processes and tools and ways you go about helping people, that's really important too. Probably more important, honestly, because you can have like credentials and low standards, or you could have no credentials and really high standards. For me, I'd rather take the high standards, especially when there's like evidence that like you've helped someone, like that's like, because that's like what's going to carry it forward at the end of the day is like, do you have proven experience of helping someone in this particular thing?
Yeah.
That means the world, so like I would plant the seed to them and say, think about this, especially if you've like felt stuck. Like, are you sure that this is the right way to do things? Because we should always be asking questions. Is this the right way to do things? Like we should never stop asking those questions, So I would probably approach it that way.
There's three things I want to talk about that point. And number one is, the value of credentials too. So I personally am against schools in general. When I look back at my university degree, for example, it taught me some stuff, sure. But I realized that the curriculum will always be so far behind than what the frontier and the forefront of knowledge of that particular time is. So you talk about like healthcare, for example, right? You talk about business, talk about marketing. I guarantee you that the moment you graduate from whatever degree you got, the world will be 10 years beyond that. Like I went to a doctor recently. So I have two things, right? I go to this primary care doctor, and I spend about 30 grand a year on this forefront of like optimal research, basically optimal self and body. And they measure like 150 biomarkers about you. They measure you every month. Every month you come in for 7 hours and they measure everything about you. And we tweak some stuff, your diet, your supplements, your sleep, your lifestyle, and we remeasure again to see how that functions, right? And I mentioned some of this stuff to my primary care doctor about like the different biomarkers that I want to get measured, stuff like that. And she had no fucking clue. And I tried another doctor, they had no fucking clue. And I tried 6 doctors, nobody had any fucking clue, right? And it just shows me like, that's one guy's on the forefront, the other guy, even though he has credentials, it's not on the forefront, right? So the credentials are always going to be kind of behind. And I'm kind of speaking controversially here, but I'm personally not going to take my kids through school because I believe that in the 4 years you spend in college, those 4 years, you can learn so much more about life, about how to succeed by doing stuff yourself than through college, kind of thing. Same thing for credentials. The second thing I want to say about that too is, the problem with, I think, with therapy, for example, is it doesn't allow the therapist to have fast feedback. So if let's say they give you a prescription to do something, they don't see how that doing plays out in real life in in an instant format. So they're always going to be like looking at it theoretically. Well, journaling theoretically should work, but they don't see, well, practically it doesn't work, because this is exactly what happens in their the specific nuanced day-to-day life. But in a coaching program like this, we can see it. We can say, do try this. Oh, it doesn't work. Here's why it doesn't work. And the fast feedback occurs faster and in the correct direction, right? And the third thing I want to say too is, like you said, it depends on what your idea of credentials are. If your idea of credentials is a piece of paper hanging on a wall from some institution, I'm not your guy. If your idea of credentials is real life results, then I'm your guy. The same way, if I'm going to seek a mentor, right? I've spent 500 grand to date on mentorship for my business and life in general. I just hired a mentor, or like got a mentor for us being parents later on. And I'm asking a bunch of questions. And none of them have any qualifications or degrees in that thing. Why I picked them to be mentors is because they've done it. They've helped other people do it. They can teach it. They can guide me because they've done it, right? The results are there. And that's what I care about. In fact, if you are credentialed, I will question you more, because I will think, if you're credentialed in business, why not do it yourself? Why are you teaching business, right? Why not do it yourself? Start your own business. Make it big yourself. Oh, it's because you only understand the theory of business.
Yeah.
Not the practice of business, right? So hopefully that makes sense for people.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
I mean, one of the experiences I had with you, Geoffrey, was when I was in this like really dark place about like where my relationship was, or my anxiety was, the things I was feeling, like you paraphrased what I was feeling better than anybody, because you've been through it yourself. Like, I feel like counselors have a sense of what you're feeling because they see it every day, but many of them haven't felt themselves because they have really great relationships. They understand what you're going through, but you've been through it yourself. You were in this dark place yourself. And like, you made me feel so understood. And there was like this resonance. And I think that that was very attractive to me, because like, I knew like that you knew exactly where I was. And I think that adds to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the second thing also is around this notion of our interview process being hard. You know, so sometimes we get people who ask, for example, right, hey, Jeff, I've spent this much money on these programs on relationships, and I don't like the way you guys interview. And then I ask them, like, okay, so you obviously have a certain criteria of what's a good interview process for a program, what's a bad interview process for a program. Your idea of what's good and what's bad, you have used it to choose the programs that you've chosen. How has that gotten you? Probably nowhere. But now you're using the same criteria that you used to choose the wrong programs, and here you are, the right program is staring you right in the face. But of course, the right program is not going to look, smell, feel the same. But yet you're saying like, well, it's not smelling and feeling like how I expect it to go, so screw that. Maybe the fact that it doesn't smell like it, that's a good sign, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, like, it's interesting because when I was going to start this program, a lot of people really close to me and understandably like pushed back, like told me things like, dude, like, you're already in a really difficult spot. Why are you just going to drain your energy and do this to yourself? Right. And like, I can understand that, but like, I decided to myself, I guess that like, no matter what happens, like, this is going to be really hard. Like, I could either go through the experience, but you know, potentially my wife and I would have separated and experienced that with my anxiety, and potentially go through what sometimes amounts to people for several years of pain and they can't get out of it. Right. Or I could go through this program that could be really hard and I could grow. I chose the latter, obviously.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I did, because like I grew so much. I'm in a different place now, as we'll talk about. But the other thing is, I want to point out, is there was a couple of times during doing your program where I saw people start and they hadn't even probably got to the third module yet, Geoffrey. And they quit and they posted about it. And like, it was really sad to see that, because they haven't seen anything yet, you know? And I could imagine, like, in their situation, maybe their family members or people that they know that care about them were telling the same things, like, why are you doing this? Like, go do something else. Go do this the right way, or whatever, And it was really sad to see that.
Yeah.
But like, that's why your interview process is the way it is, I think, because like, you want people to do this and go through it, because it helps them and it helps you.
And
right. Yeah.
it kind of goes to the point where you said about like, are they making this difficult for me? Because it's like some reverse psychology trick that we're playing to get you to want the program more, for example, right? So there was a story of, there's actually a lot of cases like this in a month, where we have an interview with someone and we say like, I don't think you're right. I don't think you trust us 100%. I don't think you understand the process. I don't think you understand what you're signing up for. Right. So do some research and come back when you're ready, when you really want this. And then they come back and they email us saying like, oh, this is some reverse psychology game you're playing. Right. If it is, it's working, because I want in more. That's what they say. It's like, and then we say, you don't get it, my guy. You're not getting in until you understand what we're trying to tell you, which is we're not taking a single cent until you can trust us. We're not taking a single cent until you know what you're signing up for. It doesn't matter if you want it. Do you understand what you're signing up for? That's what we're asking, right? So it's funny when people blame us for, being marketers, because we're not, right? We could have so much more money if we just let whoever wants to join this program join in. We could 5x our money right now. Mm-hmm. Because we right now take in less than 10% of people. So we could literally 10x our money. But we decided to say no to 90% of the revenue that comes to us, because we want to make sure that everybody who enrolls, they're like have the highest possibility of getting success. And even the people, like you said, even the people we call, the people who go through that process, they quit eventually. Like, that's how difficult this is, right? But if you like we'll say later, like if if you don't want to do the work, then stop whining about the shit you're going through. So yeah. So basically the reason why we do everything, guys, is to get your trust and to make sure that you can trust us. And if you take our kind of like tough approach and you like assume the worst intentions behind that, it tells us, okay, this guy doesn't trust us enough to assume the best. If they don't even trust us to assume the best on this thing, they will not be able to trust us on so many other things that we're going to teach them that will go against what they think they know today. Forget it. And for those people, we don't even talk to them again. It's like, if you want to misunderstand our application process, forget it. You're going to misunderstand everything we do. You're going to assume the worst about everything we do. It's going to be a bad relationship from the start.
Yep.
Just pick someone else.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Finally, on this coaching program thing, you said you teared up after the first coaching call. What was that about?
I mean, what it really goes back to, Geoffrey, is just like doing like things like therapy and still feeling stuck. Again, I'm not trying to bash therapists, but I really felt stuck with my anxiety. Like, because I talked to several people about it, and I've been doing it for years. Like, this wasn't just like 3 sessions. This was years, and things had gotten so convoluted in my mind because I had psychoanalyzed it so much. And I had this coaching call with you, and you simplified what I was feeling. Like, you're like, hey, actually, like, some of this anxiety that you're feeling is actually a good thing, because sometimes anxiety is actually a good thing because it can be used to motivate you to follow the right processes. Sometimes this is actually a good thing. And like, I just kind of sat with that after our coaching call. And I was like, I had moments where I started feeling anxiety and I was like, huh, fuck yeah, I'm feeling some anxiety right now. And like that process was really what stopped the Chinese finger trap analogy. Like actually flipping the script to the point where I'm starting to call it a good thing, because then I can't resist it anymore if it's a good thing. If I'm getting excited about it, if I'm throwing a party about it every single time I'm getting anxious, I'm not resisting it anymore.
Yeah.
And that stopped.
And what Nick was talking about is really the essence of untethering.
Yeah.
Right? We say essence of untethering is get your addiction away from outcomes and into processes. So what we're saying is, when you say, I want an outcome, you're automatically saying, I don't have that outcome. Right? You consciously say, I want an outcome. You subconsciously automatically say, I don't have that. And that creates a chasm. That chasm is anxiety. If the anxiety is channeled towards an outcome, you have no control over the outcome. So the anxiety has nowhere to go. You feel bad. You feel paralyzed. You feel stuck. But if you untether and you learn to channel that desire towards a process, you say, I want to do the process. When you say that, you're also saying, I'm not doing it. I'm not getting it done. That creates a chasm. That creates anxiety. But this anxiety is towards the process. But whether you do the process or not can be channeled, can be done. It's in your control. So that anxiety now has somewhere to go. And that anxiety becomes motivation, right? So a lot of people these days, they see anxiety like a taboo word. Like, you got to get rid of that. You got to get rid of that. Anxiety is bad. But anxiety can be, it's not good or bad. It's just, where are you channeling it to? Are you channeling in the right place or wrong place? If you channel in the wrong place, it'll be bad. If you channel in the right place, it'll be good. That's kind of what that's the part you're saying.
Exactly. Like what happened was in following your processes for months, and it took me months to get to this place, you know, the untetheredness you mentioned, like maybe I'd paraphrase my partner and the paraphrase was crap. And I wasn't having anxiety about my partner's reaction to my paraphrase. I was having anxiety about the process not going well. And that was a very different experience for me, because like I took the anxiety and channeled it so much into the process that now like the emotions and the ups and downs I was having was about the process instead of the outcome.
Yeah.
And that was like that's a truly remarkable thing to feel. That's really hard to describe.
Yeah.
But it's such a shift, and it was so important, because that's like what has like rocketed me through all this stuff, is just being so connected to the process and not caring what the outcome is. Well, not caring at all, but like just not having it like pull me down, you know, like like I want the outcome, but like I guess don't need it. Right. And I'm just so connected to the process and just wanting to grow myself and finding joy in that. That's what propelled me forward. And that was just a huge shift for me.
Good.
Yeah.
Compare this program to like the YouTube channel, because you watched it for 9 months and then you did the program now for over a year now. What would you say are the key differences between YouTube and the program, where the program allows you to just take everything to such new heights, such much higher levels?
Yeah. So your program obviously starts on the same foundation of your channel, the same format of thinking, create safety in your relationships, you know, breaking down bad paradigms. And like you really do an amazing job in your YouTube channel of like pointing out some things that are like really toxic that people do, and like pulling the rug in the way people think about that. But like in the program, you go into like so much more depth on all those topics, and give so many like effective processes, like every step of the way for everything. And like this wasn't just like, you know, some like little questionnaire in a book, right? This is like real processes that are like really make a difference. And from my experience, like it was the processes that you would give me of like vastly superior to other processes that I have been given. And that focus on processes was so crucial for me. And that's something that you don't really go to in a lot of detail in your YouTube channel, was like micro details about all that stuff. Like you allude to some like basic premises of it and plant some seeds around that, but like the detail is in the program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like, you know, people need to remember that to be successful in your relationship, you need to be a performer, right? You need to actually do it. You cannot just be a commentator. So I feel like a lot of people understand stuff. They understand, for example, like safety. They understand untethering, but on a very conceptual commentator level. It's enough for them to sound smart, to sound like they know what they're talking about. But to become a basketball player, not away from commentating to basket playing, that's a whole nother level of standards that you need to have to get there, right? If you look at, let's say, you know, I think Kobe Bryant had this TV series where he was analyzing games, and you can look it up, like Kobe Bryant analyzing games. And he had this TV series where he's just analyzing the games, and you see just how deep the analysis goes, right? You see, like, he's watching, for example, like 5 players and the way they position themselves. He's looking at like, oh, okay, this player, if he was like 3 inches here, he would have been a lot more open. He would have been a lot better position. But because he wasn't there, right, he was 3 inches this way. Like, he was analyzing it to that detail. And I feel like the YouTube videos, what I'm trying to get you to see is that there is a whole nother level. So the YouTube videos is like me sharing, like Kobe sharing his analysis of the game. But you just watching his analysis doesn't mean you're going to be a great basketball player suddenly. You just may know about it more. You can sound smart. You can commentate on it better, but you're not going to live it, right?
Yeah.
The program takes that and says like, okay, do you understand what it takes? And once you understand what it takes, let me show you how to get there. Let me show you how to actually untether, right? And I'm going to show you the blind spots you have, the paradoxes you're falling for, and all these tiny nuances so that you can perform this stuff yourself, not just commentate. And that's a very vast distance between commentating and experientially doing something. I mean, it took you a year of obsessive work to get from here to here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And it was a slow growth for me, Geoffrey. Like, I had to go through, you know, they say like you have to like fail fast to learn fast. And that's kind of what I had to do, is that I had to go through a lot of like failures and like things not working and like feel that to get there. You know, it was a process the whole way. You know, it took a long time. That self-development was not something I could have done in 2 weeks, you know, or if I had just like took a week off of vacation and binge watched all your videos in like a week or whatever, like I wouldn't have grown that much.
Yeah.
You know, and one more thing I want to add, that I think some people I've noticed like misinterpret the concept of a performer and they see it in a bad way. Like,
oh, I see what you mean. Okay. Yeah.
Because like I think someone can misinterpret that as like, oh, you're being fake. And like, you're just like, you're trying to say what you need to say to like make whatever happens in your relationship happen. It's not like that at all. Like, for me, what being a performer means, if our fence breaks in our house, I know internally that I have the right skills to manage that problem, that like when I communicate with my wife about it, like I know what to do about it. To me, that's being a performer, and feeling that confidence, knowing what to do about it. Know that like I can nudge this bad situation in the right direction. And maybe it's even a good thing because we can develop that, you know, that connection together, that experience of fixing that problem.
Yeah.
And that's a huge difference than being fake. And just wanted to point that out because I feel like a lot of people
I think that's beautiful. But I think so I want to also stress this point about like, you know, we get sometimes like people who ask us, hey, can I just buy the program itself? I don't need your live coaching. I don't need like lifetime coaching. I don't need the coaching. I just need the material. Can I just buy the material? And we can have so much more revenues if we sell people just material, right? That's like great passive revenue for us. But every time we consider that, we think about like, how people will just take whatever they learn, and when they will learn it the wrong way, and we're giving them a weapon. We're basically giving them a weapon but they're still evil, you know? They're still like have the wrong intention. They're using the weapon wrong, basically. And it kind of reminds me of what you said, which was, sure, we're going to teach you the internal performance on how you can thrive internally. We're also going to teach you the external performance. But we also teach you a crucial part, which is identity shifting, having the right intentions, stuff like that. Because yes, we're giving you a weapon here to be a performer. But sure, you can use the weapon we give you to kill people, to manipulate, to strong arm, to force. Or you can use the weapon we give you to inspire, to grow something, right? So for the people who are looking at like the word performer and they're misunderstanding that, I mean, you may be onto something, because like, yeah, we're going to teach you how to become a performer, but you're either going to be using it to do shitty things or to do amazing things, which is why we're very selective of who we enroll. If we can sense that the reason why you want to enroll in the program is that you just want the weapon, but you don't want us to change the way you're going to use that weapon, your identity behind that person who's using the weapon, we don't want you to have our weapon. Right. But if you say to us, like, I want the weapon, but also I want you to show me how to use it right. Hey, let's go. Game on. You know, that's an interesting point. So where are you guys now? Let's start with you. What is it like to be in Nick Long right now?
It's a very different place than I was a year ago, Geoffrey. I mean, it's the first thing I'll say is, in doing the work that I did in the program, I think the most important thing to say is, like, I found an internal sense of peace for myself. And I could never get there before. And like, that's feeling like that, you know, that no matter what happens in your relationship, that you're going to be able to, like, because of building the right skills and mindsets towards life, to like be able to find another great relationship if my relationship breaks down, you know, and to like feel like, you know, there's other ways that I can win, you know, like I can win if I, you know, if my partner and I's relationship improves, I win that way. But I also win if like I find another great relationship with someone else and take the skills I'm learning here and create safety in another relationship. And like, when I could feel internally in like a real way, like this is something you can't fake. You'll know yourself if you feel this or not. Like, they're like, I could win either way. And when I found that peace within myself, everything about me changed.
Yeah. I mean, when going back to what we said earlier, when we stop operating from that place of fear, we're naturally going to find it easier to do the right things from that place where you're inspiring, not manipulating, for example. And you'll be amazed at how, you know, I don't believe in manifesting, but it's kind of like that, where once you start feeling better yourself, you realize that you will start doing things that allows people to gravitate towards, and things to gravitate towards you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how is that reflected in your relationship now? You just went on a long trip to Japan with your partner.
Yeah. So one of the things that happened originally was, because of like this anxiety and the way I would manifest myself internally, like you said, subconsciously destroy a lot of safety for my partner. And when I applied the things that I learned in the program and changed that internal state and worked on that anxiety, like everybody in my life was telling you, like counselors, like when I really made a difference on that anxiety, like everything I did manifested itself in a different way. I would be less needy. I would be more confident. I wouldn't react poorly to things. I would be a lot more creative because I wasn't stuck in my head and I was having more fun with difficult scenarios. And what happened was my partner would lean into that a little bit at the very beginning, right? Kind of like, put your feet in the water kind of thing, right? And I'd create safety around that. And she knew something was different. Like, hey, like maybe I can share this thing that like I think Nick may not like, that's really hard to hear, but he'll listen to me now. He won't react negatively. He'll try to understand what I'm really feeling inside. That created a lot of safety for her.
Yeah.
And like there was a point like where she expressed that she like wanted to like, go on a trip to like Korea by herself, because like K-pop music and Korean is like so important to her. And she just like wanted to experience that for herself. And like, I empowered her. And it wasn't from a fake place. And she knew that. Like she could feel that for me. Cause like, it just, the genuine nature of the internal shifts can't be faked. And I empowered her so much and was just consistent. And over months and months, like as that kind of like momentum started to build, like that actually turned into like, hey, hey, you love K-pop music, and I'd love to experience that concert with you. Like, what if we go together to Japan where they're going, and you'd still take a trip to Korea by yourself. And it was the most unexpected win-win, Geoffrey.
Yeah.
I'd never foreseen that like 6-9 months ago. And it's kind of remarkable. Like when you lean into the things that cause you anxiety, but you do the opposite as you empower and you encourage, you build admiration for, and like you support and you connect with your partner and understand why they want that thing. So many powerful things happen in your relationship.
Yeah.
And that was all just I just couldn't get out of my head before. I was stuck in my anxiety, and when I got rid of that, I'm not a puppet to my anxiety anymore, right? Like our relationship changed very slowly.
And it kind of goes into, I was talking with a client the other day who was struggling with this too. And, a lot of men, for example, they learn the skill of understanding, but their understanding is a means. For example, like in your case, right? Or in many cases, relationships break down because there's usually some problem that they both cannot see eye to eye on. One person has what opinion A, the other person has opinion Z. The problem is like a lot of people, they learn to understand. So I learned to understand my partner, but really I understand so I can butter you up to believe my point eventually. But I still come to the conversation wanting to prove my point, right? But this is a next level of understanding where we're saying, no, we're not understanding as a means to an end to further our agenda. We're understanding as an end in itself. And then from the understanding, we then figure out like a win-win that we never would have thought of, that we never realized was there, because we just took the time to lay the cards out on the table. If your partner can sense that you are trying to understand as a means to an end, ironically, she can never feel safe enough to explore and talk about all the things she needs to talk about for you to actually understand, for you to actually find a win-win. It's a very paradoxical thing, right? So if you try to understand as a means to an end, ironically, you will never understand. Kind of thing. But you will think you understand.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Geoffrey, because I sensed that long time ago, like when I was first like learning how to paraphrase all those things, like, and for rightful reasons, like my partner thought I was trying to do the thing that you mentioned, like where like I'm just trying to listen so like I can butter you up to like, present my own agenda. And like rightfully so, because I was in this anxious state, I may not have admitted that at the time, but that's what I did in the relationship. And I'll just admit that humbly, because like anxious people often like want to control situations to make it please their anxiety, so they don't feel anxiety anymore, right?
Yeah.
And that's would manifest itself in like very subtle things that I think fit that template that you described. And I think that perfectly says that, because like I got, that's what occurred in the relationship. There was a lot of resistance around that, and that's because that's the way I acted for years. So,
So just to summarize this point where he's now, And also one more thing I want to mention is I remember you telling us too about how your partner is now choosing to actually share more stuff with you than her counselor. And actually, I think she let go of that counselor, right?
Well, we're not doing counseling right now, but there was a point where my counselor gave her a pretty uncomfortable ultimatum in counseling. I don't want to go into all the details, but like it destroyed a lot of safety for her, I sense. And she kind of like pulled away from that for a bit. And I think she reached out to me and she was just like trying to like seek like thoughts and guidance on what to do next because things felt lost at the time. And like for me, like I took everything I learned and like planted a lot of seeds about what we could do together and created a lot of safety around that situation. And like that spiraled into like us like actually taking our own ideas about what to do about our relationship and sharing those together and creating that pathway for each other together.
Yeah.
And that's different than what we were doing in counseling because we'd often wait to the counseling session to get guidance from the counselor on what to do.
Right.
We were creating this for ourselves. So we were creating safety with each other instead of with the counselor. And I think that created so much momentum, Geoffrey, in our relationship. And we still have like struggles, we still have rocky moments, but like because we're building this trust with each other that we can like not only like hear what each other is experiencing, but we can also now listen to each other's ideas. Like I think we're figuring out that we can actually work through this problem together and get somewhere and find a win-win. And like that feels so much better than where we were before.
So, I mean, your journey is pretty much exactly the same as anybody else's journey, right? You saved yourself first. You worked on the internal shifts first. Once you work on the internal shifts, you began to be in a position where you can lead now, and not lead like in a forced way, but actually I think you feel natural to lead. Once you lead, then, I always say basically your opportunity will always come. Everyone's opportunity will look different for everybody. Meaning, I don't care if you are in your partner is in another country, another state, they've moved out, you're divorced already, brink of divorce, brink of separation. I don't care what your situation is as an affair partner. I don't care, right? And I don't care the details about like why your partner is leaving, the reasons she's leaving, etc. The moment will come eventually when she will ping you back. That could be 6 months from now, 3 months from now, a year from now, who knows? But the opportunity will come. The question is, when the opportunity comes, will you be a performer or are you not? Are you going to squander that or no? It's almost like, again, imagine you are an aspiring boxer, right? You know that call from Dana freaking White is going to come and say, hey, we want you to fight in a fight.
Yep.
UFC. You don't know if that call is going to come 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. But when that call comes, are you going to say, oh shit, I've been a couch potato for the last 6 months. I'm not ready for this fight. And guess what? Dana White will never call again. Same thing. But if he calls and you go, I've been training for the last 12 months to be a performer at this, to perform this, I'm good, Dana. Let's go. I'm ready. Right?
Yeah.
Guess what? If you do well,
yeah,
he's going to call again and again and again and again. This is exactly what happened to you, right? You were preparing for a long time without any expectation of an outcome. And then suddenly something happens, boom, opportunity strikes, boom, just goes up from there.
Yeah. And it wasn't like I'm just like this tactical person with all these chess pieces. And it was like, this is the right time. It was like, I just knew something inside, like this is like an opportunity. Like I just sent, this is such a powerful opportunity, like where we can figure this out.
But it's also that untethering question again, right?
Yeah.
Like tethered people, they do something because they want an outcome.
Yep.
But people who do something because they want an outcome, they don't do it for a whole fucking year without getting any outcomes, right? So you are doing it because you're untethered. And you're doing it from that untethered state. And so when, let's say, like, you are working on the program, it's not like you work on the program every day thinking, I'm working on the program so that I can win the fight, right? You learn to do the program because you love doing it. That's it. That's what you would like to spend your time on. You're addicted to that. And then when your partner reaches out to you, you are playing out the right things to say and do at that point in time. You're not doing and saying those things because, I'm saying and doing these things because then she'll get me, she'll come back. It's like, no, you're doing those things because you are those things. It's just, that's how you just operate. It's second nature to you.
Right? Exactly.
So again, there's so much nuance behind this, like untethering and what it's like to be untethered. And we can go so deep on this.
I know.
Right. So people who are like thinking about this and going, there's a reason why we say, if you are changing to reconcile, you ironically will never reconcile. Because if you are doing and saying things because you want the outcome, that's your intention, because you're coming from that tethered state, your partner can smell through that shit and it will never work. And the reason why it worked for Nick is that, ironically, the moment you stop doing things to get an outcome, to reconcile, to get your partner back, and you just do it because you love the process, ironically, that's when it shit keeps coming. The moment you do because you are, not do because you want to have, that's when you get your outcomes.
Yep.
But if you are at a position where you do because you are, you don't even think about doing. You don't even think about doing the having, right? You just do because you are. It's a very mind-bending concept. It's a different place to be in. And I akin it to like sleep, right? The moment you fall asleep is when you forget about falling asleep. But once you ask the question, am I asleep? That's the exact moment you wake up and get out of sleep.
That's exactly right. That's an amazing analogy.
Yeah.
It wasn't tactical. It just happened because I had, from this untethered place, just focused on growing myself for its own intrinsic value. Just knew what to do. Yeah.
So let's talk about this big takeaway, right? The first takeaway. And I know we're like an hour, 60 minutes in. Do you mind going longer?
Yeah, for sure.
Let's do it. So the first theme behind the takeaways is really how creating safety is really the foundation for every success, right? Let's start with the why first, so people understand it. Now that you've built safety, you've been in a position where you didn't have safety, now you have it. Why, in your own words, is safety crucial for you?
If you don't have safety in the relationship, you don't intrinsically trust your partner to like be able to like not only like hear and share what you're thinking, but also to like listen to the other ideas. Like you can't build anything on top of that. Like if you can't build the basic levels of safety, how are you going to like be in a place you can actually admire somebody? If you don't feel safe with someone, how are you going to admire somebody? Right? How are you going to feel sexually attracted to somebody? Right? And if you can't do those things, how are you going to be able to even get into the place where you can generate momentum to work on your relationship? Like nothing can happen without that foundation of safety. But when you feel that with each other, and you know that you can share, like no matter what, and you will feel understood, like everything goes in another direction. Like the snowball starts to build, it's snowball going down the hill. It starts to get larger. It actually can build the momentum.
Yeah.
And really power your relationship into a different place, So it was pretty amazing to realize that and then see that start to actualize.
To double down on what you're saying, I think safety, not only, if you don't have safety, you cannot stop disasters, but you cannot build, you cannot stop a negative, you cannot also build a positive. So for example, passion, sexual passion, right? If we don't have safety, she will not feel safe enough to tell me the things I do, the things that are happening that turns her off. Right?
Yeah.
And if there's not that safety, we can never talk about it. So I will keep doing the things that turn her off, and I would do it blindly, and I would just keep turning her off, and I would just get more confused why she's turned off. But not only does it prevent her from sharing a negative, but it prevents her from sharing what could be a positive. Meaning she could, because like if she doesn't have safety, she can't tell me, hey, here's what you can do to get me kinky. Because again, that's a very sensitive topic. It's a very sensitive conversation. So not only, so if you don't have safety, not only are you like amplifying the negative, you are robbing yourself, starving yourself of positives. And this is double-edged sword that just kills everything down.
Right. Like if I don't have the safety to like tell you that like, hey, you know, when you do stuff with our dinnerware like this and don't take care of it, it hurts me in this way because we share it together. If you don't have safety to talk about that, how are you going to have safety to talk about some really sensitive stuff? Like you mentioned, like sexuality and things like that. Like you just can't get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this applies for like passion, for alignment, for admiration, for safety itself. Right? You need safety to create safety itself because like there's different levels of safety there. Right? It's like you can't build anything without safety. So which is why I always say no situation is ever unique, because take whatever problems you have. I don't care what problems you have in your relationship, why your partner's leaving, why you guys are not working out, you guys are not compatible, whatever it is. If you were able to lead the culture of the relationship to where you can create safety 10x of what you can find anywhere else, do you think your problems will still be problems? Probably not. Because like, okay, sure, you're incompatible, right? You don't feel like you are meant to be together. If you had the safety for both of you to actually explore on your own on why you don't feel that way, on expressing to each other like what the other person is doing to make them feel that way, make them understand that, listen to it, have an adult conversation about it. Yeah, sure, you might feel like incompatible, but you're not going to leave that relationship because you cannot talk about it. There's someone you can resolve it with. It's like, you know, the catch-22 thing, right? If I have a business, for example, and we have a problem, I don't just go, oh, we have a problem? Well, fuck this business. No, it's like you try to fix it, right? But if I reach a point in my business where I cannot fix it, no matter what I do to try, then that's when I leave. So your partner, the moment she leaves, she's leaving not because of the problems. She's leaving because there's a problem, but there is zero safety to express it, to listen to each other, let alone fucking resolve it. So if you can't even resolve it, well, fuck it, just get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's really interesting because like talking about the fundamental attribution error earlier, the FAE bias, mentioned that before. And, you know, like I was in this place, Geoffrey, where like I would listen into how she would say things and not the deep meaning behind why she was saying it, you know? And because of that, like I was always focusing on that, it would generate like resentment towards me, rightfully so, because like I wasn't hearing her. Like I want to express what I'm feeling in a truly genuine way so you can feel what I'm really feeling. And then you can know about it. But I couldn't see that because I was focused on like the character blame, you know? Yeah. But when I stopped that and I started listening to her, like now, like it's like, oh, I can express myself in a truly real way to you and you'll listen.
Yeah.
And now that I'm listening,
exactly,
I am empowered to do something about it.
Exactly. And that's the thing that that goes into like the how of how you create safety, right?
Yeah.
So again, we talk about this paradox with people where, you know, you can't create safety by telling your partner, hey, you can feel safe telling me this stuff, right? That's a striving approach. That's you using the logical approach. Just like you trying to go to sleep by going like, by telling yourself, hey, it's okay for you to go to sleep. Like, I know that already. Like, if I knew that, like, if I could, I would have fallen asleep already. That's obviously not, you know.
Yeah.
So the way you create safety is really by thriving in the moments you cannot fake, right? So first of all, it's built not in the obvious things you do and say, but in your micros, right? And you cannot fake that. So you could say the perfect words, do the perfect things, But if you're doing and saying it from you can sense like a tinge of micros that doesn't feel right, you will actually destroy more safety.
Yep.
There. So this is the first thing. You've got to get your micros right. Right. And it happens in moments that are unexpected. Right. So if your partner can look at what you do, the last 100 things that you do,
mm-hmm.
and then the 99 things you do, she can think in her head like, I could see how he could have like learned that from some YouTube channel, whatever it is. But there was this one moment though where things got really hard. Like, I don't know how he could ever fake that. Like, that's him. That's gotta be him. That's gotta be the real self. That's
mm-hmm.
what is going to change that safety, right? Is that
mm-hmm.
one moment out of the 100 you get. So like for Nick, for example, right? His moment was when his partner came to him and asked him about like some advice. In that moment, she's looking like, okay, let's look at the way he's responding here, the way his micros, everything like that. Is he faking any of this stuff? If he's not, it's like maybe maybe this guy is different. I don't know. Then she tests the waters again and test the waters again and test the waters again, right? That's how you create safety. Go on.
Yeah, so that was definitely true in that moment, but I think there was a moment before that where that was even more prevalent. I don't want to go into the details, protect my partner's privacy, but there was a point in our relationship where it really did seem like in the middle of your program, like we were going to separate. And I mean, anytime that idea had brought up in the past, I was like this rolling tumbleweed of anxiety, like I would go hide myself in the room, and like lock it and get mad and pouty and like all those things, and I wouldn't sleep and I would be really grumpy the next day, and then probably not very fun to be around and all those things. But then that happened and everybody like knew something was different. I knew, so first of all, she knew something was different. My counselor knew something was different. And I knew something was different. It's me too. Like that was, I'm humble about it. Like the biggest thing wasn't shocking my partner. It was, I shocked myself.
Yeah.
Like, I really have grown, and because like I was okay with it and I was fine. And I had found that piece of myself and I had empowered her to like, hey, like this isn't the right relationship for you, and it's not clicking. You don't feel that sense of like clicking with me. Like you deserve that in your life. I want to encourage you to find out someone else, and that's when like everybody knew something was different.
Yeah. You can't fake that. You can't.
I could not have faked it.
Yeah.
I couldn't have faked it. There was no way I could have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing, a hard part about creating safety is also like, again, navigating the paradoxes of creating safety, right?
Yeah.
It's like what you think creates safety is actually destroying it, and it's destroying it in ways that you don't understand. And the reason why you destroyed safety in the first place is like none of our clients are evil people. Like I think they all want to do the best thing. But there's a reason why, even though you understand safety, but yet you still keep doing things to destroy it, maybe it's not that clear cut. Maybe because it's a falling outcome, not a striving outcome. And you got to treat it like that. You cannot fall for these like paradoxes. But the biggest thing I think that is so hard to create safety is that it's nothing that can be done just tactically, like you said. It has to be backed up by deep internal shifts. Yeah. So, for example, we say the quote, right? No one has relationship problems, but people have problems with the self that reflects in a relationship. In your case, it was your anxiety, your lack of self-esteem that really destroyed that relationship. And you're a classic example of how like you understood what safety was. Like you understood what safety was a long time before you joined the program.
Yep.
But even though you conceptually understood it, you didn't create it because you didn't have the right internal shifts to actually affect your macros, your micro expressions, allow you to do things, the correct things during the moments you cannot fake, etc. What were some examples of like where you knew how to create safety, but you just cannot find yourself like delivering it time and time again?
Yeah. I mean, like, like my partner is like, very kind of like she wears her emotions on her shoulder and is not afraid to tell anybody about what she thinks in like that truest sense. And like sometimes I just didn't know how to handle that. Like I knew going into something like, hey, like I got to stop focusing on what she's saying and understand what she's really saying behind that. And like I'd say that in my head, right? And I could think that I could almost like visualize myself doing it at the time, right? Like, oh, that's easy. I just got to stop doing that because like that totally makes so much sense. And then something would happen, right? And she would share that thing with me in a real way, right? And subconsciously, I couldn't take it.
Mm.
And I would like start to feel that like crumble or that cringe inside, right? And it would negate all the creativity. I'd feel stuck. I'd almost feel like lost for words. And, like even if, and sometimes I didn't say anything at all, or like I would just like flinch,
Yeah.
And it suggests you like that, like, like you think I'm like it almost communicates like that, communicate like you're a bad person or whatever. Like there's so many things that can be like communicated in so many subtle ways because, handle something well, and planting that seed consciously in my mind was not enough to get me to that place. Like I understood how to create safety. Like you said, like I know that like I need to listen to my partner and like ask really good questions, like high quality questions, pave the way. But like there's something blocking me inside that's just preventing that from happening, no matter how hard I like cerebralized it. Like I just couldn't get there. Yeah.
A great
Yeah.
example of this is like,
Yeah.
so, the last couple of years, I would say we've been working on that sexual passion side of the relationship.
Oh, okay.
And in the beginning, I saw this paradox, and it was like this, right? So I wanted my partner to be very feminine. Like I wanted to act feminine. I wanted to like, I love the feminine parts of her, and I wanted to nurture that. And so I would say a lot of things. I would do a lot of things to nurture it. I would give her a lot of compliments. I would, do a lot of things. But then there's one day where she was we were getting ready for like a dinner with a bunch of people, and she was like putting on her makeup, and while she was putting on her makeup, she was like talking to me about things and just going on rambling on for hours, and we were running late, and she wasn't even looking at the time, and I got pissed. Not pissed, but like I got like annoyed. But like, Sam, we gotta go, right? Stop putting on your makeup. Like it's fine. We gotta go. I didn't realize that right there, right? Those were the exact things I was doing of why it was so hard for her to feel feminine. Because whenever she is feminine, I punish her for it, right? So it's kind of like safety too. For you, for example, here, you want to create safety, you say, right? So part of creating safety is for your partner to be able to express her emotions the way she wants to express it. So here she is expressing her emotions the way she wants to express it, and you don't like that. No wonder she doesn't feel safe. It doesn't matter the hundreds of things you do to create that safety. That's the moment that will destroy all the house of cards you've built. And that's another example of how like the safety is in the subtle like that. Like you have to be very careful about the paradoxes like that,
Yeah. Before I would tell my partner, like, hey, like you can share stuff with me. I want you to share stuff with me. This is before the program. Like I want to know what you're thinking, like I want to know what's on your mind. Like, tell me more, and like, but then she would tell me something and I would subconsciously penalize her for it.
Yeah. And you can't help yourself again because
exactly
for the
I couldn't
FA
stop
bias
it from happening.
Yeah. For the FA bias, mindsets again. So, for people to understand this, right? Again, it's not the event itself that causes your emotions. It's the way you interpret it. And your interpretations are bred via your paradigms. Now, why are we talking about this? Because the way you feel about something will determine what you do about it. So, for example, right, in your case, if your partner is expressing herself in all these very like volatile ways, so the event is that partner is expressing herself in volatile ways, and you interpret that as like, well, that's an inconvenience. I don't like that. That's kind of like she's being kind of a child right now, right? Because your paradigm is that adults need to be stoic and have no emotions. Well, guess what? If that's your paradigm, that's how you're going to interpret it. If that's how you interpret it, you're going to feel annoyed by her expression. When you feel annoyed, that's going to show in your micros, in your micro expressions, micro tones. And outcome is that you're going to destroy safety, right? The problem is that a lot of people, they try to, they feel annoyed. They look at their emotions. I feel annoyed. And they tell themselves like, stop feeling annoyed. Stop feeling annoyed. But the more you do that, you create a purple giraffe paradox where when you tell yourself, stop being annoyed, subconsciously you're saying, I am annoyed. And you start to feel guilty about that and create a new layer. And it's just like, again, like it doesn't work that way. And which is why most people's approach don't work.
Yep.
The better approach is that we take is to change the fundamental paradigm, reprogram that fundamental paradigm so that the next time she is volatile, your paradigm about that is like, it's a good thing. You interpret that in a positive way. You naturally act in a positive way, positive outcomes, and so on. That's a much more effortless way of doing it. And that's the right way to actually work on internal shifts, right?
Absolutely.
I wanted to branch off a bit and talk about, you know, when your partner said, I want to go to grad school, and that just rattled the shit out of you. Tell me what was going through your mind at that point. Like, what were you thinking? What were you feeling at that particular moment?
Yeah, you know, when I think about it, I was feeling like she didn't care about me. She was thinking about like what she wanted, and she wasn't thinking about how it would affect me. And like I was feeling like I wasn't part of the equation. So that rattled me inside.
Yeah.
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 At the time. Yeah.
So again, we go back to that cycle that we talked about in the very beginning, where we said like, you are showing up in a relationship from a needy place, from a place of low value. That turns your partner off. When you see your partner pulling away, you play the same tactics that you used because you're anxious. Partner pulls away even more. That makes you even more anxious. You double down on the same approach.
Yep.
And in this case, the approach you were taking is, you know, the approach from the internal state of like playing victim. It's all about me. What are you doing to me? Not about her, for example. Right? You were playing from a place of tetheredness where what she says and does affects you so much. You're playing from a place of not being bulletproof, where you look at tough truths as a bad thing, not a good thing, as a threat, not as an opportunity. And so you've been living like that. You living like that cause her to pull away. When she pulls away, you double down on your victim mindsets, your tetheredness, your lack of bulletproof style, push it away even further, and it just keeps going.
Yeah.
And a classic example of this, right, is when I get a comment that says, if your partner wants space, fuck them. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Because to me, that person just showed all their cards.
They showed what they're really made of, what they really think. Yeah.
It shows just how little belief you have in your own value.
Yeah.
It shows just how insecure you are. It shows just how tethered you are, how victim you are, how not bulletproof you are. It shows just the lack you operate from. It's the lack that your reason why your partner left in the first place.
Yeah.
And now that your partner's finally
Yeah.
leaving, you're doubling down on the same attitude that caused her to leave to judge her for why she's leaving. Like, it's just, dude, how many more times do you want to go through that cycle? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. You know, Geoffrey, kind of like, I almost feel like a tear coming down my eye a little bit, just because like, when I think back to that situation I mentioned, like I did that cycle, like you said, like, I mean, I think I actually may have tried to like convince my partner to like stay and create reasons for her to stay here. And like, that was before I had even talked about what her intentions were. Like, there was a possibility that like she could do this online. And I had never even considered that. But I was trying to get her I was to the point like where like I was trying to get her to stay. I had never even fucking asked those questions. And like, that showed my real cards at the time. So
Yeah.
she was right to pull away from me, right? Because I was not creating safety.
Yeah. And if you react like that, she's gonna go, okay, maybe it's a good idea to get some space from this guy. Shit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I say that because like, if you were actually high value and you actually believed in the value that you created in a relationship, and you know your value is real, it's not something you made up, it's not something you say, it's actually there. Like, you actually are, you actually embody that. It's like, I'm not afraid for my partner for leaving, for like having space. If she wants to take a trip for a month, go for it, you know? Because at the end of the day, I know, like, I'm not afraid. But people who are afraid of giving their partner space, they're afraid because they know that if they do give them space, their partner's going to find someone better or something better. And there's a chance that like she might go, you know, she's like living in North Korea all like for 10 years. And she goes to South Korea and she's like, oh shit, I got a taste for life. I like it here. And I will never go back to North Korea. Fuck Kim Jong-un, whatever, right? But if you were not like North Korea and you were actually like providing actual value, it's like, yeah, go to South Korea, go to China, go to US. This is the best country to be in. Don't be scared, you know? And if you're scared, that should tell you a lot about like, am I actually that high value? Or am I drinking my own Kool-Aid and thinking I am, but I'm not? I can't hear you right now. I think you're muted.
Yeah, my dog's just barking in the
Oh,
background.
no worries, no worries.
I don't know. He must hear something outside, but
Yeah.
yeah. So like it was I mean, it blocked me so much that like, I mean, like my partner like literally may have like wanted to like do the hard thing of like going to another state or whatever it is to like do graduate school, right? And that's hard because like many people don't feel the courage to do that. Like it takes ambition to like want to move away from your family and your friends and make a life for yourself temporarily, someone else, to build that for yourself. But like, because I was so stuck in like this needy place that you described, like in this insecure place, there was no way I could have ever saw that.
Yeah.
And but when you build that for your partner, right, and when you make them feel admired in that way, that's what pulls them to want to come back to your relationship and trust you, because they know that like their life and their desires and their ambitions really mean something to you.
Exactly. So if you guys are in a position where your partner wants space or divorce or whatever it is, right? One response that a lot of people take is like, they go, well, here's why you shouldn't get a divorce, or like they get angry at their partner for it. But the way we would acknowledge it is like, okay, let's put my happiness aside for a bit. Let's talk about yours here. Obviously, you want to leave because you're not happy, and you can find happiness somewhere else. So let's talk about how we can get you to happiness, right? One way we can get you to happiness is by telling me all the issues that you perceive or you think are happening right now, and I can take that and I can do something about it. So basically, like, I can take away, help me help you in a way, right? And if I can't do that, then feel free to go. But basically here in the conversation, your partner can sense that it's not about you versus me, right? It's not about you versus me. It's like, oh, here's why I need to pull you. Here's why I need to go out of here. It's basically you're taking this problem that you and your partner have, which is like, okay, you're unhappy right now. That's a problem we're trying to fix, right? And it's you and me versus this problem right now. We're a team right now, right? And to be a team, we cannot prioritize our desires more than other people's. So if, let's say, the win-win is maybe we need to take some space, maybe we need to separate, maybe we need to divorce. If that's the actual win-win you arrive at, that's the best solution to the problem, then that's the best solution to the problem, right? You cannot let your emotions kind of like come into play, especially your selfish emotions come into play to be like, well, I'm willing to talk about anything and everything except divorce. It's like, but what if that's a solution? Right? And I think that's what you're saying when you're saying like you're coming from this such an insecure place and scared place, that there was this solution that was there, but you couldn't even see it.
Yep.
You couldn't even see it because like you didn't allow the conversation to actually happen for you to even see it.
Yeah, like if the Korea trip.
Yeah.
What if we go to visit Japan and you go to Korea and we get to have a trip together and you get to go to Korea?
Yeah.
Like, didn't even think about it.
Exactly.
Didn't cross my mind because I was so stuck.
Yeah.
And I was just like in my own feelings and my own emotions, and that cycle, couldn't get out of it. The flywheel, it just kept going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the takeaway for a lot of people here is like, all our clients who have achieved success, they do it because they basically took all the problems that are happening in the relationship and they allowed enough safety to the point where their partner can really express what they're truly feeling and thinking and so on. When their partner can truly express what they're truly thinking and feeling, that actually puts you in a position where you can start to figure out better win-wins that you didn't think exist.
Yep.
But if you lack your internal shifts and your partner can sense that you are trying to understand, for example, from that needy place where you're trying to understand as a means to an end, you still have an agenda because you come from this insecure place. She will never share the things in the first place for you to even find the win-wins. That's number one. Number two is that even if she does share all the things, your brain will be so uncreative, will be so blocked that you cannot see the win-win that is staring you right in the face, right? Again, it's like for your job, for example, like if you have a creative job and you come to the creative job being all scared every single day, that fear will stifle your creativity. Same thing here,
yep.
Right? And so if you look at clients like Spencer, for example, who, his wife wanted more children, he didn't want more children. Most people would say that's a irreconcilable difference. I don't think they're going to make it. But they realized that like from that conversation that like, no, there's something deeper than that, right? And there's enough safety to actually uncover what that deeper thing is. Once we uncover what that deeper thing is, we open ourselves up to actually discover better win-wins than having children to fulfill those deeper things. The only reason why someone says they have an irreconcilable difference is because one or both people doesn't have the internal shift or the skills to be able to lead a conversation, to lead themselves, to actually find that win-win. Because the win-win is always there. You just don't see it.
That's exactly what happened to me in our relationship. I just couldn't see it because I was just so stuck in my own emotions that like it trapped me. So yeah. Geoffrey, can you give me 1 second? I just want to grab my dog real quick.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
See, here. Buddy, here. Here. Good boy. Good boy. He's just like, don't you hear me? There's something going on outside. Yeah.
So 2 more things I want to talk about, Nick.
Thanks.
So we talked about basically how safety is the root. Second thing we talked about was really how you cannot create safety without the right internal shifts.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the internal shifts a bit. And
Absolutely.
so we talk about already how the bulletproof vest is really, and your internal shift is really like a falling outcome. That managing your emotions is really a falling outcome, that you cannot just tell yourself, don't feel certain things, don't get angry, and expect yourself to not get angry. In fact, it's going to make it worse. What was your old approach like, if you could describe it, to controlling your anxiety? Because you had a lot of experience in that. And why was this new approach so revolutionary for you? Why did it work for you? This auto suggestions and the 4 stages that we talk about in our program.
Yeah. So the old way I used to go about like controlling my anxiety or influencing my anxiety is I would try to understand some sort of like paradigm, like reason why this anxiety is bad, or try to like look at a situation in a different way. Like, they call like reframing the situation, right? And also like look at like what things might be causing it, like the relationship with like my parents, or like relationship growing up, or, things like that, and try to like find a root cause. And then, but like, I would try like planting those seeds in my mind, like consciously. Okay, I understand that this is bad or whatever, but then some event would happen that would produce anxiety, like something in the relationship or things that have nothing to do with the relationship even. And because like I had not changed my internal self, like my subconscious state, I would still react to that situation in the same way, because I couldn't get out of that flywheel of emotions. Like my emotions would go off. It's like you said before, it's like trying to stop a windmill with your bare hands, And that's what happened to me, is I couldn't stop it. And I was still being influenced by my own subconscious state.
Yeah.
So what was revolutionary in the program for me, Geoffrey, was like being able to like actually influence my internal state and finding a way to affect not just the conscious, but the subconscious. And I learned that I had to do that not in a logical way, but in an emotional way. And that's hard for me because, like I said, I'm very cerebral.
Yeah.
And when I realized that like my own literal voice was like a mechanism that I could use to affect my internal state, that was mind-blowing for me.
Yeah.
Like in doing that, like when I built that internal voice, it affected my outward voice, right, too. And I became more confident in the things I'd say. And it was incredible. To feel that like first time, like I recording my own voice and like listening back to it and using my own voice to kill the bad things that I believed in my head about certain situations, killing those bad paradigms, and like not just thinking that, but feeling it. That was like one of the most incredible things I felt in the program, was just like feeling your internal self shift.
Yeah.
Every time you listen to it. And it's like, whoa, that was incredible.
So for people who don't know what we're talking about here, it's really, the shift really happens in this way. So if we understand that our paradigms cause our interpretations and our interpretations cause our emotions, then we need to change things at the root, which is the paradigm level. So the question becomes like, how do we reprogram our mind? And when we talk about paradigms, we're talking about your subconscious beliefs about stuff, right? Your subconscious beliefs that basically color the lens in which you see the world, you interpret the world, the narratives you tell yourself that cause your emotions. So how do we change that? How do we change something that's so subconscious? And it's really a 3-stage process for us. So the first stage is what we call state of consciousness. This is basically taking whatever you feel, the negative things you feel, and being able to like look within to understand, see, and feel and accept that you're feeling the things you're feeling. So if you're feeling angry, for example, it's not to tell yourself to stop feeling angry, is that I am angry and it's okay. And you can see evidence of this working when you look at, for example, like, for those men, for example, who have been angry or for people who have been in like a very depressive spell, when do you get out of that angered state? Or when do you get out of that depressive state? The moment you get out is when the moment you label it, the moment you say, oh, I'm angry, shit. Or, geez, I've been depressed. What am I doing in my life? Right? That moment, whether you realize it or not, that is SOC. That is the moment when you're no longer in the depression, but you're someone observing the depressed state and you're going like, what am I doing? Right? Once you observe it like that, you cannot be the same as a depressed state. Like the observer cannot be the subject anymore. That's a very deep topic. So the first skill is like, go to SOC, because the SOC is the first thing you do to get out of that purple giraffe paradox and to really get out and separate yourself from the feeling. And you are you're now the entity behind the feeling, right? Once you do that, we have a system called autosuggestions where we ask people to create their counter voices, but we do it with a specific structure, with a specific ammo, with a specific method that really appeals to the senses, that eventually like gets to that subconscious level, right?
Yeah.
And the best way I can describe this without going too deep is, there's a reason why we dream and vision and we memorize jingles, because our eyes and ears are the most like two senses that are mostly associated with memory. When have you ever dreamed in smell? Fucking never. Even touch. Whenever you dreamed in touch? Fucking never. But you dream in vision and you remember jingles, of all things, right? So we're trying to use that to create an auto-suggestion that appeals to the eyes and ears to really allow us to get into that subconscious side. Once we do that, basically, like, you observe it, you accept it, you shift. Once you shift, you observe the new feelings and you let that basically like bake in there. And you do this over and over again. And you realize that over time, you are reprogramming your subconscious mind. And now whenever you get resistance, whenever you get tough truths, your instant reaction is not bad. Your instant reaction is going to be good. It's going to be positive, healthy, etc. And that's the clincher, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a moment. Oh, you were going to say something?
No, go ahead.
One of the illusions we learn in your program is the importance illusion. And I could only see one outcome, one way I could win. And I think one of the most incredible experiences I had was when I made a voice recording for that thing and felt something real from it. And it changed my internal state. That did so much for me.
Yeah.
It's really hard to describe, just to feel like your insides like actually changing as a result of like listening to the power of your own message. Like, it's an incredible feeling. Like I don't think I can find the right words to explain how empowering that feels.
And, I kind of want to speak to like the existing clients too, because I see a lot of people doing this in the wrong way, where they're doing this whole process, but they're kind of reinventing it and they're recreating it and they're modifying it slightly to fit what they want to do.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work, because like it's designed that way for a particular reason. Like, you can say, for example, like, oh, that just sounds like, mantras or whatever. It's not. There is very specific nuances that differentiates autosuggestions from mantras, for example. Different ammos that we pick, different structures that we pick, different ways of like listening to it, delivering it, recording it, etc. Very different. And those small little differences are what makes all the difference. So don't feel the need to like just say like, oh, he's telling me these very specific steps to do the autosuggestions, but it sounds kind of like this, so I'm gonna do it like this. It's like, no, don't like dumb it down, right? Understand how to do it properly.
Yep.
But once you do it properly, a lot of people also, they struggle because they've never done it and they cannot see it working because they've never done it. But this is something you just have to feel for yourself. And once you feel it, like you said, that's when you go, I feel the train. I'm a believer. Yeah. But you got to feel it first.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, can I give an example of that feeling?
Yeah.
So like, I feel kind of ridiculous saying this, but I'm going to say it anyways. One of the things that was like really important, like, and I'm not going to go into details about the auto suggestion process, but the idea of like a really potent analogy is one of the parts that's really important. And consistently in many of my auto suggestions, I went back to my childhood, and I would like actually like incorporate things I knew would pull really, really hard on my heartstrings from like, familiar with the video game Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time?
I've heard of it.
There's just like one part like the end of the game where like you face Ganon, who's like this, you know, basically the villain of the end of the game, and he comes out of the rubble, right? Like, I'm still alive, right? You lose, you know, everything's hopeless. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
And he knocks like the Master Sword out of his hand, which is like a mystical sword that can only destroy evil. And that's what it feels like, right? But then you come and you thrive.
Yeah.
That story, like, because like I played that game so many times, it makes me like, feel something inside.
Yeah.
And like that pulls on your heartstrings in such powerful ways. And you feel that, and like something inside you changes.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
With the first time I found SOC, I wept because I've never felt that before. I never felt that level of like shift within myself before. The first time I created like the auto suggestion, a really good one, I also cried. I was like, man, this hits. Like, and yeah, it's something that people just have to feel for themselves. It's hard to describe, huh? That's the thing.
It's really hard to describe, but I think the best word that I can use is like just, it's intrinsically empowering.
Yeah.
You can actually affect your internal state.
And it's a beautiful feeling because like, you know, most people I would say are slaves to their emotions, slaves to life, right?
Right.
Their life is like something happens, they feel something because of this happening, and they act out of that feeling, create worse outcomes, which makes them feel worse, and they feel even worse, and they do even worse. So they keep like feeling dumb shit, thinking dumb shit, feeling dumb shit, doing dumb shit, getting dumb shit, then thinking dumb shit on that, and so on and so on and so on. It just keeps going. But here we're actually like saying, no, you are free to feel whatever the fuck you want. Right?
Yeah.
And if you can feel whatever you want, you can choose to feel any good things you want and avoid any bad things you want. It doesn't matter what happens. You are in control of that feeling, and it's just like, it's like walking through life knowing that you cannot die. Like, you would walk through the darkest alleys and you would be like, you know, you would go to a dark alley and you would go, let's look at the architecture here. Not right. Like, nothing scares you, and you can see a different side of life. You can open your mind to like different creative spots, and it's just yeah. But I want to end this by saying like, okay, we say basically all this is good, right? Like, your life is changed and you are gonna live the rest of your life in this changed state. Like that's also a really nice feeling where you can look at the rest of your life and go like, there's nowhere to go but up. Like, I know it's gonna be up.
Yeah. It's funny, Geoffrey, because like I'm 90% done with your program, not 100% done with your program, right? And like I thought, oh, you know, I'd be doing this for 3 or 6 months, I'd be done. No, like, okay, I'm in this for over a year now, and I want to keep growing. Like, why stop? Like, keep building myself, keep going back to the principles, keep growing, find new ways, to keep growing, like always chasing that becoming, right? Like, that doesn't have to stop. I like it. That was the thing. It's like, I enjoy doing this. Like, that's why it's so powerful, is because like when you find that inside yourself, you just keep going.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of people joining the program at first, right? They look at this outcome that you're getting right now and they say, I want that. Right? But people don't see the work it took to get there. So this last year, I wouldn't say has been an easy year for you, right? Like, learning the program is not an easy process. You know, and it goes back to like one of my friends is like a fitness coach, and I think you've heard this analogy before, where he's like ripped to shreds, right? And most people look at that and go like, I want to look like that guy. Are you sure you want it though? Because like if you want to look like that guy, you can only eat 1 carrot cake a year. Are you down with that? You cannot drink anymore. Are you down with that? You cannot just eat whatever you want anymore. Are you down with that? You're gonna find yourself hungry and craving shit all the time. Are you down with that? If you're not, then maybe you don't want to be that guy, right? So it's almost like the choose your heart philosophy that we had teaching the program.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure, doing the program is hard, but getting divorced and living miserable is also fucking hard. Right? So if you want an outcome, don't whine about the work it took to get there. If you want to whine about the work that it takes to get there, then you're saying, I don't want the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you now say like, okay, fine, I want the outcome, and stop fucking whining about the work that it takes to get there. Right? And if you want to whine about it, then you're basically saying maybe you're not meant for long-term relationships. Which if you're saying that, you're like, the same way, you know, if you go to pilot school or if you go to like the NBA boot camp and you say, this is too hard, then don't be a pilot. Don't be in the NBA. But if you're not in the NBA or if you don't want to be a pilot, then don't whine about playing in fucking D League or G League. You know?
Yeah. You know, originally people looked at this, like I said, like that, I'm just going to drain myself. Like, I think my counselor saw it that way. Like, this is a lot of work, you know, and, you know, my friends and close family. But like, as they saw the growth, they're like, oh, like, he really wants this.
Yeah.
He's growing so much. Like, he never said things like that. Like, and they're like, oh, you know, and I guess like I knew from the start that I had the steering wheel, right? I could drive the car where I wanted. It may have not been the easiest route. Maybe I had to take the back end way around the mountains and it would be really rocky and I'd have to go over some steep cliffs. But like I knew that I could drive that car where I wanted.
But that's also crucial for your partner to believe your changes too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because like if you changed, let's say, if you changed, but your changes were easy, there is nothing for your partner to go like, are changes real? But here, she knows like, dude, this guy went through some shit to get here. He must really care about this relationship. He must really care about self-growth. He must really care about being better, being different, right? But if you go like, okay, he says he cares about being different, but as soon as the program gets tough, he quits. Does he really care that much?
Yeah.
You know?
That's a really amazing point, right? And you know, I think during my journey, like my partner could see like this is way different than she thought it was going to be, and like she could see how much I cared about my own growth and like what it really meant for us to, or for me to do that, and like the impact it had on our relationship, and you know, to really feel that, like you said, it's not going to be an easy journey, but that's the way it is. But that's a good thing. Because like if I didn't have any of these hard moments, then I wouldn't have an opportunity to thrive like that.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. But that hard part only happens in the beginning, right? Because of course, like the reason why we have untethering so early on in the program is that at some point you need to get to the point where you actually enjoy the work, right? Like the reason why people yo-yo diet, for example, is that they never enjoy the work of dieting and exercising. The reason why people cannot like create results that last a long time is because they don't enjoy the work. So they will do the work, but eventually their willpower runs out and they stop and they yo-yo the results. So, you know, being in this program is not like that. Like I wouldn't say it's like a slog throughout. I think what happens is in the beginning, you're going to find it tough and you're going to have to use a lot of willpower to choose the right hard. But ultimately, when you get to the part where you're untethered, which is almost in the beginning of the program, I want you to untether and actually learn to love the process in itself. So this doesn't feel like a slog anymore. And so I want you to get to like Nick's position where he can do this for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years, for 4 years, for 5 years. It doesn't really matter because he enjoys it. It's like, why take a vacation from your fucking vacation? You know?
That's a really great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like at the start, it's like, okay, I got to do these processes today. All right. And then it turns to, fuck yeah, I get to do these processes today.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
When the right thing doesn't become work anymore. But the shame is when people quit before they even get there.
Yeah.
Like you haven't even gone to the part where this can become enjoyable and you quit. It's like, dude, that's really hard to do. Like, how do you quit in the introduction? Like, that's ridiculous. But that's also crucial. Like your enjoyment, your untetheredness is also crucial for your partner to believe your changes too. Because like, think about this, right? If you get someone, for example, who says they changed, but then you can tell they hate every single moment of it, versus someone else who like they changed, but they love changing. They're like smiling every day. Who would you believe have changed? Of course, the second guy. Because the first guy, you'll think, dude, you hate being here. How much longer can you hate this before you give up? So of course it can never be permanent. So if your partner sees you changing and she can tell that you hate it, you feel it like it's like work. It's like, oh my God, I got to do this every day. She will never believe your changes. Right? Again, it goes back to the saying that we had. If your intention behind joining the program is to save your relationship, guess what? You will forever hate the work. And you will never convince your partner that you've changed. Because for your micros, from your everything you do, she can smell that you hate it. She can smell that it's not genuine. Because you're coming from that tethered spot.
It's hitting home real hard, Geoffrey. It's like, I mean, like some of the books our counselor read or wanted us to read, and some of like the stuff, like I'm not going to go into details, but like it was like that. Like I didn't enjoy it, and she could smell that from a mile away. She knew that I was enjoying that, you know, and that influences everything in such a negative way, right? When you enjoy the process for the sake of itself, though, and you enjoy the growth, everything changes.
Everything changes.
Yeah.
And so ironically, again, when you let go of the outcome and you do the process because you love it intrinsically, that's when you get the outcomes, because that's when you get everything believable. So if you're asking the question, when can I get my partner back? How long do I have to do this program? By definition, if you ask that question, you'll probably never reconcile. So the answer is never. But once you stop asking the question, the answer becomes soon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's mind-bending.
It's amazing how many principles apply to other areas of life, apply to relationships. You can't be successful at anything with that mindset.
Exactly.
You want to start a YouTube channel, you want to learn how to do, for me, it was like astrophotography. Like you got to go through.
What is that? Astrophotography?
Yeah, I take pictures of galaxies and nebulas and things like that. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's on my website. And like, but like I had to stop, be focused on that final picture. But like eventually I enjoyed the process of setting up my telescope, right? And getting my polar alignment correct, getting my camera set up, right? Like listening to music while I'm doing it. And it was just like this fun experience. And it's just like, and then like, I almost enjoyed it when something didn't go right, because it means like I could obsess about why. Like,
yeah.
And I learned something about it. And because I loved it so much, like the outcome came, and I became a good astrophotographer. Now it's like,
so I recently started playing video games.
Yeah.
And I know, because like it feels like this to me, right? It's like, imagine you have the main missions in your video game, but then sometimes like in a video game, you have like the side stuff, you know? And when you discover like a side mission, you go like, yes, that means I can play more, right?
Yeah.
Have longer. It's kind of like that in life, you know? Sometimes like problems come and you are taken on a side quest. Most people go like, oh shit, this is annoying, because they hate life.
Right.
hate being in life. But if you love being in life, if you love the process, you're like, oh, conflicts come. That means I get to spend more time on this.
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah.
right? I like that.
The final boss in a Zelda game, it doesn't mean you can solve any puzzles anymore. You're done. The game's over.
Exactly. When you solve the final puzzle, it's like,
Yeah.
all right, I just see the ending credits now.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, Nick, that was a long interview, but I had so much fun. Guys, if you want to explore the program and go and really like geek out about getting to that new stage of your life where, you know, it might take like a year, 2 years, 3 years for you to really master this program. But, you know, this is like 2-3 years of for a lifetime of bliss, basically. Like your trajectory of your life will be very different before and after this program. So if that's what you're looking for, we have a masterclass where we kind of broadly outline what our program is about, what it's like. At the end of the masterclass, we'll show you how to apply for the program. Be sure to pay very close attention and put energy into and care into that application, because right now we only can take in less than 10% of people who apply. That's all we have room for, unfortunately. So if you want to do it, I'll leave the link to the masterclass below this video. Stay to the end to get the instructions on how to apply and apply properly. Nick, thank you so much for your time. That was freaking amazing.
Absolutely. Very happy to. I enjoyed this very much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. All right, guys. Check it out. Bye. What do you think, man?
That was awesome. Like I said, I'd have some camera shyness at the beginning, and I'd totally just like absorb myself into it at some point and forget that was an interview.
Yeah.
I was just having I felt like I was having the longest conversation I've ever had with you, honestly. So,
dude, to be honest, like, you know, usually I can sense someone's energy kind of tailing down about an hour and a half, an hour 45 mark, because like it gets kind of tiring, and I can tell their answers are not as rich or whatever it is. But
for
I
me,
didn't sense that from you, so I just kept going.
There was a point I felt that internally, but it was honestly because of my dog Zeke. It was distracting me so much. I was like, well, I don't want to interrupt our call, but I'm like, I got to get him to stop because there's no way they can't hear this. So I don't know if that came through the mic, but
it didn't.
Yeah, like so he's here now, but he's just sleeping. He's like, oh, I'm like so asleep.
So I'm gonna check out your photography page. And let me know if you want to be like a video guy for us. I'm looking for someone like smart, someone who like loves the content itself. Because like I can hire, you know, video people from outside, but they don't love the stuff. They don't understand. They don't like dig into the content itself. You know. Yeah.
You know, you explained like that for your work in just to promote your work in your program, you had to like learn how to be a YouTuber and to talk on camera. To me, the video is kind of the same way, because like I wanted to start my channel too, but I was a photographer first on a video or a second. Didn't know how to record myself, didn't know a shit about lighting, which I have here, you know, and I had to learn that too. I'm a photographer first, but I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
You know, how to use DaVinci Resolve, how to do video, like how to edit videos, like how to get good lighting, you know, and like, so like, I love that. And to be able to apply that to something else, they also really, I've learned to love now, and like I'm passionate about like what I've learned in your program, and like to make a difference in someone's life is a very entertaining prospect to me.
Yeah. So just let me know.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. I'll just plant a seed. Plant a seed.
Plant a seed. Seed planted. I'm going to pour some water on it.
All right, man. Cheers.
Good to see you, Geoffrey.